What's up guys, this is Heat. In this video we're going to take a look at my Chaos Inoculation crit based Ethereal Knives build that I used in the closed beta hardcore league. If you want a more in-depth look at the build itself, I'll link in the description the skill tree and a Google Sheets guide. The primary goal of this build was to test CI in the Awakening patch, make it viable, and have an extremely high ES pool. The second goal was to achieve strong DPS on EK by being crit based. In the closed beta Awakening patch, EK has received a really nice buff and now feels like a really strong leveling skill and a very strong endgame skill. The general flow and gameplay of this build is as follows. You curse with Assassin's Mark, hit with a power charge on crit, Ice Spear setup, and then finish them off with EK. The Ice Spear power charge on crit setup is used because depending on your clear speed and how the map distributes packs in the map itself, you might have a hard time maintaining a consistent power charge pool with Assassin's Mark only. It also helps when you play in parties because sometimes Assassin's Mark is not used in parties and it's difficult to get the last hit in because other members of your party can do that as well. So let's take a look at DPS with a 5-link setup and a level 19 EK. When we have Hatred on and no power charges, we're looking at about 28,000 DPS with 52% crit chance, and when we have all 6 power charges, we're looking at 35,000 DPS with 70% crit chance, which is pretty high for a spell. One thing to note is that in parties, and especially parties with extremely fast clear speed, it becomes more difficult to sustain power charges. Essentially, the faster your clear speed is, the more difficult it is to maintain those power charges in a party because you're moving from pack to pack extremely fast and your Ice Spear becomes a wasted cast. So one thing that I do in parties is I take out my increase crit multi gem and replace it with power charge on crit. Now obviously this will decrease your DPS, however it'll allow you to keep up with the clearing pace of the party. Now in terms of defense, without really crazy ES gear, this build still has 10,000 ES, essentially life, and then with Vault Discipline, a crazy 14,000 ES. Let's talk about skill tree. There are several things that scale EK damage: cast speed, spell damage, increased physical damage, and projectile damage. Also, crit multiplier. So that being said, I went through the which part of the tree through spell damage, picked up some crit chance, the power charge up there, and Alchemist. Alchemist is really important because there's a lot of flask management in a CI build and you want them to be as effective as possible. Now what I'm showing here is the unique jewel Energy from Within, and what it is it transforms life into energy shield, but the downside to it is that it's not actually very efficient. If it says 3% life, it'll convert that to 1% instead of 1.5, so it rounds down. I also did pick up this jewel socket down here because the spell damage leading up to it isn't actually that bad. And then I did pick up Path of the Savant and Foresight because those are pretty strong. Influence helps with increased ES from Discipline and some increased DPS from Hatred. Infused Shield is a given because that node is absolutely insane. It's a 15% more multiplier. So I did come down through the crit portion of this part of the tree and picked up projectile damage because it's really good. Snipers are very good passive for this build, and then also the mana nodes to help with mana regeneration. Again, I picked up True Strikes. I try to have as much crit chance as possible on this build because it's very important. And then lastly, I think if I were to get a 6 socket, I would probably use Life Leech and spec 2 points into Ghost Reaver for an incredible amount of survivability. Your other options are to come down here for another Jewel socket and this little wheel of increased physical damage. And you also have the option of dipping into the Ranger tree as well. It just depends what you want to do once you're past level 90.
Ace did the Coin Shrine. Oh my god. That's ridiculous.
Let's look at gear. The main thing you want on your gear is very high ES and resistances. Secondary things you probably want on there are stats that'll help you run your gems. As you can see here on this chest piece, it's pretty high, 541. It could be much higher. This helm has 324 ES. I've seen helms with a much higher ES as well. So when you see that my defense and my ES pool is 10,000, it could actually be much more if I were in a league where I could purchase very high-end ES gear. Now for these boots, Rainbow Strides drop for me. These are really strong, but you can also run something like Blood Dance to get frenzy charges, because if you run a minimum of 3 frenzy charges on this build, it'll increase your DPS by around 5,000. On a belt, you want a rustic sash because it increases your physical damage, therefore increasing your damage of EK. Then you want ES and resistances. In terms of jewelry, what you're looking for is crit chance, resistances, and ES. If you can run 2 diamond rings, that would be optimal, but in my case I couldn't, so I only settled for 1. But I did roll another increased global crit strike chance, which is pretty beastly on that ring. Now I did roll crit strike chance on this ruby as well, and some other things that you might want to look out for on jewelry is mana regeneration and flat mana in order to help with casting your EK. This neck piece is pretty good. It's both offensive and defensive because it gives 14% increased maximum energy shield and 22% spell damage. Since I'm playing a crit-based build, I think daggers are the way to go because they have an implicit global crit strike chance. Other things that you want to look for on a dagger is spell damage, crit multi, and crit chance for spells, because all those mods are extremely important for increasing your DPS. I think ideally you would probably want a similar dagger to this, a golden Chris or maybe a platinum Chris, because it has 80% increased global crit strike chance. Then you can roll spell crit chance on it as well. So you can have on a dagger about 180% crit strike chance, and then if you're lucky you can roll the hybrid mana and spell damage, and then spell damage on top of that. So you can have somewhere around 70% spell damage pretty easily and all that crit strike chance. Here's a dagger that I was using before, the one that my character is using now, and this one's pretty strong because I had crit multi and crit chance. Let's take a look at my links. I have Ice Spear, Faster Casting, GMP, and Power Charge on crit. This 4-link setup is used to maintain power charges. For my 5-link EK setup, I have EK, added fire damage, increased crit damage, increased crit strikes, and spell echo. Having quality on your EK is very important because it increases the distance it travels and therefore indirectly increases your DPS because it can hit more enemies. In my shield I have Enfeeble, Tempest Shield, and Cast when damage taken, obviously a defensive setup. In my gloves I have Hatred, Increased Duration, Vol Discipline, and Discipline. Just as a note, I was experimenting a lot in closed beta, so that 4-link setup on my gloves might not be optimal. I also have on my weapon Assassin's Mark, Enduring Cry, and Ice Golem. Ice Golem is there to increase crit strike chance. In my home, I have Summon Chaos Golem, I have Empower. I was leveling this, I wasn't sure if I was going to use it or not, but I wanted to level it. I have Faster Casting, and I have Minion Life. So that basically sums up the build. I hope you guys had fun watching the video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys.